Some memories fade with time. Faces blur. Voices soften. Moments collapse into vague impressions that no longer feel real. But every once in a while, there's a memory that refuses to dull, one that stays sharp, no matter how many years pass. This is one of those memories. It happened when I was very young, second or third grade, maybe. That time in life when days feel endless and nights feel insignificant. When fear exists, but you don't yet understand its true weight. I don't remember much from that year of my life, but I remember that night with unsettling clarity. It was a school day, and it had been raining relentlessly since morning. Not a light drizzle or an occasional shower, but a heavy, soaking downpour that turned streets into rivers and sidewalks into slick mirrors. By the time my parents picked me up from school, the sky looked bruised, dark gray clouds hanging low, as if they were pressing down on the world. That evening, my parents were supposed to attend some kind of upscale event. I can't remember exactly what it was, a fundraiser, a dinner party, something involving people in suits and dresses. All I knew was that they were dressed nicer than usual and seemed distracted, checking the weather every few minutes. They left shortly after we got home. At first, everything was normal. They told me they'd be back later that night. I waved from the front door and didn't think much of it. But as the evening wore on, the storm worsened. The rain intensified. Wind howled against the house. Trees bent and groaned outside like they were alive. Eventually, the phone rang. I remember answering it and hearing my mom's voice crack slightly as she explained that it wasn't safe to drive back home. The roads were flooded. Visibility was terrible. They had decided, reluctantly, to stay the night at a friend's house closer to where the event was being held. They apologized over and over. I told them I was fine. I insisted I wasn't scared. I even said I wasn't hungry, which was a lie, but I wanted to sound brave. Before hanging up, my mom gave me a list of instructions, spoken slowly and carefully, as if she knew how important they were. Lock all the doors. Check the windows. Close the blinds. Leave a light on. At the time, I didn't understand why they were making such a big deal out of it. I didn't realize how young I actually was, or how unsafe it was to leave a child home alone overnight. Instead of feeling scared, I felt excited. No bedtime. Unlimited candy. No rules. I stayed downstairs in the living room, stretched out on the couch, watching TV until my eyes burned. I told myself I'd do everything my mom asked later. Right before bed. But I never made it to that point. At some point during the night, the sugar crash hit me hard. I don't remember falling asleep. Just the sudden jolt of waking up to darkness and silence. The TV had shut itself off. The room felt wrong. Cold. Not just slightly chilly, but uncomfortably cold. Cold enough that I noticed immediately. For a moment, I considered curling back up and ignoring it. But then I remembered my mom's list. Even at that age, I knew she'd somehow know if I hadn't done it. Guilt pushed me off the couch. I went around the house, checking everything. Front door locked. Back door locked. Windows closed. Blinds shut. Light on. Everything was exactly as it should have been. And yet, the house still felt freezing. I pressed my hand against the windows, checking for cracks. Nothing. I convinced myself the storm must have knocked out the heater. It made sense to my tired, half-asleep brain. I went upstairs to my room. That's when I realized how bad the storm truly was. My bedroom had a large window facing outside, and the rain was slamming against it violently. Lightning flashed every minute or so, briefly turning the room stark white before plunging it back into darkness. Thunder followed immediately, shaking the walls. I wasn't afraid of storms back then, but I did worry about the trees outside. They bent wildly in the wind, branches whipping dangerously close to the house. I lay in bed, trying to sleep. That's when I heard it. A creaking sound. Not loud. Not constant. Just wrong. It wasn't the house settling. It wasn't the wind. I knew what storms sounded like, even at that age. This was different. It sounded like wood shifting, slow, deliberate. Our floors were carpeted. The sound didn't belong. I tried to ignore it, but the longer I listened, the more it bothered me. Eventually, I sat up and scanned the room. Lightning flashed. Everything looked normal. Except the closet. Another flash of lightning illuminated the room for a split second, and my stomach dropped. The closet door was slightly ajar. I knew it had been closed. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stood up, slowly, and walked out of the room. Every step felt impossibly loud. Every second stretched into an eternity. I went downstairs and crawled under the dining room table. That's when I started crying. I don't know how long I stayed there before I heard footsteps on the stairs. They weren't normal footsteps. They were erratic. Heavy. Almost clumsy. Like whoever or whatever was walking didn't quite know how. They came closer. I held my breath. Then I saw them. 2 bare feet stepped into view. The legs were filthy, muddy, scratched, tinted an unnatural yellow. Covered in cuts and grime, like they'd been crawling through bushes or rolling in dirt. They staggered slightly, as if struggling to stay upright. Something fell from their hand. A wrench. It clattered against the floor, loud enough to feel like a gunshot. I thought I was going to scream. I watched, frozen, as the figure stood still. Not bending down. Not moving away. Eventually, they continued walking. I listened as they stumbled through the house, then finally, the front door opened and closed. They were gone. I stayed under that table until morning. I never told my parents. The man in the rain. I was 15 when the second incident happened. By then, I was old enough to understand fear, but still young enough to underestimate it. It was a rainy Saturday night in May, just weeks before summer break. I had always struggled with sleep. Complete silence was the only thing that worked for me. Rain, fans, even quiet humming, it all kept me awake. That night, the rain was relentless. Around midnight, I gave up trying to sleep. Walking in the rain was something my parents encouraged. We lived in a safe neighborhood near a well-lit public park. I put on a rain jacket and slipped outside without my phone. The park was peaceful. For about 20 minutes, everything felt fine. Until I saw something lying in the road. At first, I thought it was trash. Then I realized it was a person. Face down. Motionless. I approached, heart racing. That's when I heard the screech. It sounded like an animal, wrong and distorted. When I turned back, the man was sitting upright. Staring at me. He stood and sprinted toward me, grinning, a knife in his hand. "I'll kill you," he screamed. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the trees. I hid. Eventually, I made it home. I never saw him again. The Riverside Stranger. I'm 29 now. Camping is the only thing that clears my head. A few months ago, after a breakup, I drove deep into Northern California wilderness to be alone. But when I arrived, there were already 2 trucks parked near the trail. I ignored it. I shouldn't have. 2 men were fishing. One acted strangely, covering something when he saw me. Later, one of them stood across the river and took my picture. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. And I never was.